America Business.
Welcome to CIO Talk Radio with your host, Sanjog Gall. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Today's topic is data centers, belt titling versus strangulation. Our guests for today's show are Robert Rosen. He's the Chief Information Officer for National Institute of Arthritis and Musculoskeletal and Skin Diseases with the National Institute of Health, and is also the past president for SHARE. We have Albert Esser, who's the Vice President of Data Center Infrastructure, and he's with Dell. And then we have Rohit Khai. He's the Vice President of Engineering for Storage and Availability Management Group at Symantec Corporation. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Great.
Good morning.
Very well.
Good morning. Great to be here. So, Robert, how's the weather where you are?
We just had an Alberta clipper come through, so it's really cold. But at least there's no snow like there is in Chicago.
Oh, yeah? Tell me about it. So, Albert, you're from Austin, and so how are things going there overall?
Yeah, so weather-wise, I think I'm in the warm spot. It's still, just about freezing, but sunny and supposed to be in the 60s today. So,
awesome. And Rohit, how about you? Where are you located?
So I'm based in the Bay Area in California. So, weather-wise, can't complain. Although we have not had our share of rain this year, so things are dry, but can't have everything.
Right. Yeah, so this is all about the weather. Now, along with that, we also see the economic climate, and this show or this particular topic actually came about when we were looking at data centers. Everybody wants to look at that as a lifeline for most businesses, and then we also want to tighten our purse strings. And basically what we are trying to find out is that what do we do to keep this lifeline going, and we are also at the same time making sure that complexity is not introduced while it is getting introduced, because everything wants to become data center centric. So is this something that we are just falling into? Is it more of a trap that we fell into? Or is it something that we are designing this to become like this? So, Robert, what do you think?
Well, I think, as businesses recognize the strategic and financial value of the data centers, clearly you're going to get more work in the data centers. What's interesting is that this has been going on for years. The amount of people staffing the data centers keep going down, and that, of course, is by design as the vendors work to make the systems easier to operate and so on. Because I clearly remember when I first started in computing, the computer room was that big glass-walled cage with all these people in white coats running around with just dozens and dozens of people. And now you look at a data center and you're lucky if you see one person in there. And so that's actually a good thing, and it lets you concentrate on getting the job done as opposed to just having tremendous staff in there, which costs a lot of money.
So you're saying that you see fewer people, but then by removing the people, are you able to substitute it with remote monitoring and come up with those technologies, and then you do not, you are basically saving money, but is that creating any risk?
I don't think so, because of the quality of the products we're getting from the vendors and the effort they've put in making the systems operate with less attention. I know I was involved through my SHARE activities with some work at IBM a number of years ago, where their goal was to essentially completely lights out, which obviously we're not totally at. But they invested millions of dollars in software and hardware to make things operate without the constant attention of people. So that's been a big plus.
Now, what do you think, Albert, from your standpoint? What are you seeing data center evolving into?
So I think, the observation Robert made is absolutely right, that the, data centers are getting empty lights out kind of thing. But what we also see is there's more and more on facility side, so on hardware side of the data center, and an IT systems side of the data center. We have observed that on the facility side, UPS, air conditioning, running the data center as a physical entity a lot of automation has been happening, and it's to the point where you don't need an awful lot of people really wide in there. But we also have observed that on the IT side, specifically on the server side, utilization and the focus on productivity hasn't really been there. So a lot of servers run in the single-digit or low double-digit utilization, and it's really not a function of being in the data center as it is, more of systems management, virtualization, workload management, and these kind of things. So I think the notion of that people which run the data center in the data center has been moved to a remote desk. I mean, everything is remotely accessible. And it was very important to be in the data center at one point where everything was driven, directly at the core of the IT operations. Now, with all the servers being completely remote, accessible and configurable and workload manageable, you don't need the people in the data center, but you need an awful lot of people outside of the physical walls to make it effective and productive.
And in fact, that is what has been heard from many people. And in fact, Rohit, you can talk from Symantec standpoint. In fact, I was reading something where Symantec explicitly stated that that's an issue about total number of people, maybe not on site, but that is reducing, or there's a tendency to reduce the total number of headcount which is allocated to data center. And also, we are making it increasingly complex. So that is a double whammy.
Absolutely. So a lot of good points have already been made. What I'll do is I'll throw in a bunch of statistics into the mix. So we recently reported the 2008 State of the Data Center report. It was a survey, and in that, what came out loud and clear was doing more with less could pretty much be part of IT's job description, and most data center managers reported both an increase in what they needed to accomplish as well as a big drive to reduce costs. And in terms of doing more, almost three-quarters of companies said, their user expectations, service level expectations continued to rise, complexity continued to rise, data center capability continued to rise. And, in terms of reducing costs, reducing people was cited as sort of a big, it's not sort of so much reducing people, but operating the same larger, more complicated data centers with the same staffing levels. And again, the key approaches to actually accomplish that, hovered around the notion of increasing automation. It hovered around some notion of cross-training of IT staff, and the usual suspects, in the way of server virtualization or server consolidation. So tell me this: we can always try to get to the moon, but it's not always possible. So what is that healthy mix, which will allow people to some extent eat the cake and have it too? That is to really run a very lean data center in terms of people, processes, and technology, and still get to scale and extend based on the business needs. Albert, why don't you take it?
Yeah, so I think you kind of really lead the witness here in that regard. I think we will see an increased focus on data center productivity. The way we measure data centers today is on the infrastructure side. We have this PUE or DCIE measure where we say, as good as you can be in feeding the data center with power and cooling, and if you have a very good number there, then you have a good data center, but you are not measuring, you are not concerned about any kind of utilization on your IT equipment. And so what we believe is if, as you kind of alluded, the data center becomes more and more of the factory of our industries. And I think we need a more factory-like view on the total investment, on the total capital which is spent in the data center, which is mostly really the IT gear. And an example I always use is if you would be making sheet metal stampings, today if we would apply the same measurements as we do for data centers for the stamping machine, we would measure how well we air conditioning and how well we feed the power to the stamping machine, but we would not count the stampings being made. And so what we see is that the increasing IT demands, and they won't go down. As you said, also, we will get more and more. Will require that at this point, really, we focus more on the data center productivity, meaning that the equipment which is in there, both air conditioning, UPSs, but also the IT equipment, is utilized to a much higher level than what traditionally was done. And I think that is where the new measure will drive a new behavior in the data center and have it look more holistically.
We are moving forward. We are going somewhere, but do we actually know where in terms of data center? How do we define a well-run data center? Go ahead.
Great. So I think the key word here is, what Albert already touched upon, keyword utilization. I think we've been in a period of profligacy, and it's time to put some austerity measures in place. Instead of thinking about sort of concepts like ROI or return on a year, I think it's about the here and now, return on the quarter, return on sort of what you're investing now and how efficiently you're managing the resources you have. So, driving up utilization is a big driver for us here at Symantec, helping our data center customers drive up utilization. And most recently, we've actually gone, especially in the area of storage, we've gone to a pretty emphatic statement of saying, hey, stop purchasing storage, Mr. Customer. Think about sort of the current utilization levels, being at abysmal levels, almost 37%, and, storage continuing to grow north of 60%. So you have to kind of stop and take a look at trying to run your data center more efficiently. And this entails a few things. You have to clearly think about the visibility aspect in terms of how you're utilizing in the area of storage. You need to be thinking about technologies like storage resource management type technologies to actually effectively have visibility into how storage is being used, and it's actually if it's serving the business needs that you have. And adopt, quite frankly, technologies like thin provisioning, where so you can actually effectively improve the overall utilization of your storage span. Look at technologies like deduplication. So there is a bunch of technology solutions available, but typically they come with operational cost and operational challenges. So the key message from Symantec in this regard is that you have to look at both the technology dimension as well as the operational or management dimension in terms of, not just stipulating service levels, having business IT alignment, but also implementing management and automation technologies to actually manage the complicated data center.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and listen to Robert about how does he define, or in his experience, the world should define a well-run and a lean data center. And then, given where we are with everything in terms of economic downturn and IT budgets being put on hold, how do we still make it what we want it to become? So please stay tuned. We'll be right back. We'll be back and discussing it with Robert.
Money. Up-to-date business and financial news. Money. Call now and get the financial information you need. 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790. Voice America Business. Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Now, Mrs. Johnson, before we close on your mortgage loan, I want to make sure you remember Mike.
Hi, you can trust me. I'm African-American, just like you.
So, here's the low monthly payments and interest rates we promised, and here's where they triple.
The rest of this stuff is just here to make sure that we get your house when you can't pay us back.
What a lovely house.
Predatory lenders are never this easy to spot. Call us at 866-222-FAIR and protect yourself with the facts. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Fair Housing Alliance and the Ad Council.
There are so many challenges facing management today around the world. The new Management Network is here to provide practical insight and solutions for many of these challenges. Hosts Don and Bonnie Folk will explore topics designed to help you get the competitive upper hand, including organizational tools, personality and leadership, cutting-edge management tips, and much more. Join the new Management Network live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Business Network.
The Internet's only all-business and financial radio network, Voice America Business.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Welcome back, folks. So, Robert, we are talking about how do we define that dream data center, and given where we are with our economic climate and the tightened purse strings, how close can we get to that dreamland?
Well, I think we can make a lot of progress. I think one of the most interesting, there was an IDC study that was published a few months ago which talked about the utilization of our computers in the data centers. And it was actually interesting the way it was presented at the session I was at, because they said, let's take guesses, and the numbers were all over the place, but the actual numbers were down around 8%. So if you look at that, you're saying, my goodness, I have a lot of unused capacity there. I have all this demand for capacity and for computing. Why aren't I making better use of the systems that I have? Why am I going out and just buying more hardware? So I think one of the important things that data center managers can do is take a really hard look at their capacity and what they're actually using, and look at some of the technologies that will enable them to get better utilization. They'll get a lot more work out of their data center with a very small increase in cost.
So, Albert, when you look at the way the organizations are handling their current infrastructure, are they fully exploiting it before going in and trying to ask for more from the executive management?
Yeah, so you're putting really the finger on one of the problems on how IT organizations are structured right now. The utilization of the data center is usually not in the hands or under control of the person who is in charge of the data center. More and more we see that the data center is run, from a facility side, so you keep it up, you keep your SLAs up, so the servers are all up and so on. But what's really are running on the servers is more with the IT folks in the business units and the application managers in these business units, and so there is the division between IT and facility world, and green data center is really a data center as was before mentioned, really is a utilized data center. The 8% is a very common number which we see with our customers, and virtualization, for instance, can help you to bring that number dramatically up. And so what we found is that with the IT growth over the years, the answer was, if I need a new application or if I need new IT, I buy a new box. Applications were dedicated to boxes. The new boxes are so powerful that the old applications can't even utilize, a lot of it. In fact, what we found is the average utilization of a server went backwards over the last 6 years or so as the applications were not able to really harness all the hardware power you could give them. So I think there's right now not another alternative, but using your hardware better by means of virtualization, or cloud computing comes later here in the list. But you have to focus on how much IT utilization you get on your raw horsepower you have in your data centers, and it's a cross-functional decision and cross-functional activity where, if I run my IT more effectively, more efficiently, I get much more done on the existing hardware and on future hardware. I can get 40 virtual machines on one of our latest rack mount 805s, they use a 40th of the power than what a dedicated machine would use. So, making a data center green is basically making a data center more productive, and that doesn't really cost you anything. It actually saves you money. So, at the end of the day, I think you don't have a choice. If you want to have a productive and cost-effective data center, it will be green because it won't use as much power and cooling as you would have alternatively, and vice versa. So whatever your motivation is, if you have a highly productive and a highly utilized data center, it will be green and it will be very cost-effective for you.
Rohit, representing the vendor, you're always, as an organization, looking for pain points, and that's where an opportunity lies. So if you were to truly inventory the pain areas in data centers, which is basically causing them to think that, hey, we are not up to speed yet, or we should just spend more money to save more, what are those?
Sure. So I think we characterized the issues in the data center into three big buckets. There is a core set of business issues. On the business side, the key pain points are, the fact that the regulatory climate is being imposed on the businesses today. Necessitates volumes and volumes of data and ever-growing volumes of data in the data center. There is a core business issue of green computing, because in the world of global supply chains, being green is not just a cost-driven measure. It's often viewed as a business enabler and a competitive differentiator in many industries. And so you cannot ignore some of these things, even in a cost-constrained environment. And then from an operational set of challenges, you have this ever-growing complexity. You have sort of the lack of ability to grow staff. And the big other challenge is that the different layers in the data center are actually interrelated. So there is uncoordinated change often being infused in the data center, and that makes managing all these different layers of the stack, the server stack, the storage stack, the network stack, the fact that they're all interrelated and applications are riding on top of this infrastructure, managing that in a changing environment becomes hugely challenging. And then, there is the constant nudge to actually embrace new technologies. You have new technologies in the way of, cloud computing, software as a service. You have new technologies in the way of sort of, no surprise, virtualization. So all of these new technologies, or thin provisioning, all of these new technologies bring their own set of challenges, right? If you think about virtualization and you deploy it, it's not, it's not straightforward. You have to think about the entire end-to-end architecture in terms of what kind of storage architecture would be appropriate for a virtual server environment and so forth. So you have to actually think end-to-end in terms of architecture, always strive to do more with less. And staffing, it's a pretty ho-hum issue or a sort of a mundane issue, but staffing continues to be a challenge for our data center customers. So that's sort of some top-of-mind issues that I sense. One of my personal favorites is the concept of green and, being able to go green in a cost-effective manner. If you think about the IT sector, it consumes about 1.5% of the national total electricity, right? And it's almost twice what we were consuming in the year 2000. So it's a big, big driver, big challenge for data centers. And we think there are many sort of cost-effective ways to go green, and I can share that later in the conversation. But these are some of the top-of-mind challenges that I see.
In fact, you picked up a very good segue for the next question, which is, Robert, can you please help share your views on this? Is the green part. Albert, you mentioned that we can go green and we can do virtualization, etc., which will allow us to, have a more productive data center. At the same time, we will reduce the power consumption, and cooling will also be favorably impacted. So, Robert, when we are talking about this and all the different investment, but it is still money going in with an anticipation that there will be some savings in due course of time. Who is going to bell the cat at this time to say, hey, let's go green when we are trying to keep the lights on?
Yeah, it is an interesting challenge, but I think one of the real drivers here, and I talked about this to some other people as well, and it was just touched on, was the cost of power. One of the interesting things about a data center was if you go way up in the management hierarchy, they know there's a data center there, but that's about all they knew about it. Today, with the power bills coming in, the bills are getting so high, they're ending up on the CEO's desk, and they're saying, look at how much money we're spending on electricity. And of course, the response is, well, who's the big user? And guess what? It's the data center. So they call in the data center manager and say, hey, you've got to cut your electricity usage by 20%, but you can't cut out any service. So those are the challenges that are facing the data center managers, and more of them, because the requirement to cut back, I mean, you can call it green or you can just call it saving money. Either way, these are things that are on the data center manager's plate that he has to address. And so they have to take a really hard, critical look at their entire infrastructure and start doing. Some things are real easy to do. If you've got servers that you're running 24/7 and they're not used overnight, turn them off. It's not like the old days where if you turned a machine off, you never knew if it was going to come back on. Machines are a lot more reliable today. I know one organization where I talked to people, they actually did that. It was the only thing they did was they cut the power on their servers at night because they weren't being used. And they generated a reduction of over 20% in their electricity costs. Now, that was not hard to do. And so you really have to take a critical look at all the factors in your data center and play the what-if game. Don't just say, we've always done it this way. Say, what will happen if we do something like turn the servers off overnight or pick something else? Will that end up saving money? In most cases it will, and it doesn't cost you anything. And boy, the CEOs love that.
We'll take a quick break, listeners. Let's start with Albert when we come back and look at what approach would he take or he would suggest the IT leadership takes in terms of making a compelling case in front of the executive management to go green when the times are tough. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Sell, buy, sell. All we talk about is money. Talk to an expert. Call now. Toll free 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790. Voice America Business.
Have you found yourself overwhelmed or stalled, not getting the goals you dream of? Hear what the experts say about how you can break through. Solutions, systems, skills. Get your strategy on track and accelerate your business success. Join Linda Feinholz every Monday for The Spark Effect. Linda and her guests will show you and your team exactly how to grow your business further, faster, easier. The Spark Effect is heard every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Network.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Adding fractions is nothing.
For real?
Look, these are denominators. You multiply this one so that it's the same as that, and you add them up.
Man, that's easy.
Charles Bennett dreamed of returning to the old neighborhood as a teacher, but without money for college, only half of his dream came true. He's back in the old neighborhood.
Well, enough math. I gotta deliver these sandwiches.
Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. A message from the UNCF and the Ad Council.
From the stock market floor to your laptop, we are Voice America Business.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Welcome back. So, Albert, how can we go green the cheap way?
Yeah. So, we have done actually quite extensive analysis of the whole thing, and so instead of me going through all the data, if you want to go on Dell.com/hidden data center, you can pick up a lot of the white papers and data there. So I'll just keep it high level. We did an analysis. So if you focus on your infrastructure, so your hardware item on the data center, if you have a 10-year-old data center, which a lot of people have as a leftover from the .com boom. Most likely your powertrain, your electric powertrain is about 60-65% efficient from entrance service to the 12-volt plug on the motherboard. If you would replace that with today's technology, you would get it up in the 90%. So that's a significant improvement, but it's about where you can get. So it's a one-time injection of efficiency, and, that's good. Same for the air conditioning. Data centers are running way too cold in general. Air conditioners are much more effective if you run them at a higher temperature. Simplistically, it's almost like running stairways, right? So if I come from a deep temperature or low point and have to run up the stairways and then, get rid of my heat, it's more work than I would just have, the temperature more even between inside and outside. I know it's a very simplistic view, but that can improve your energy bill, on the data center level, another 10, 20 or so %. And again, that is something which you can do, and there are these 2 times efficiency gains are one-time gains you get, and but there's no more to come there. The real efficiency gain which you have is in the IT gear itself. As mentioned before, 8% is a common number. It's going backwards. If you start to focus on your IT utilization and the data center productivity, what we found is that if you do a modest degree of virtualization, and you also subscribe to a modest refresh rate of your hardware, like 3 or 4 years, so start to be able to move your applications on the newest hardware you have. All of a sudden, what you do is you have your data center participate in Moore's law. Today's data centers, you buy the application with your server, and they're sleeping beauties. You sit there, and whatever technology was there and whatever state of the art was there is there. And if you have 6-year-old servers, 10-year-old servers, they have not participated the entire time on Moore's law. If you have virtualization, workload management, having these applications movable, you can insert a refresh cycle of your hardware and have these applications run always on the best and most power effective and productive gear. And if you do that, what we have found is that you're actually not only slowing down your power consumption in the data center, you're bending it backwards. So if you are in a situation where your IT growth year over year is about 50%, so it's a healthy growth which a lot of businesses have, and you apply a virtualization strategy and workload management strategy combined with refresh rate, you will not have to build a new data center for a long time, and the data center you have today, you will get more effective. And that's kind of, I guess, the definition of green IT. And the reason why we coined it hidden data center is that any customer you walk in today, you will find another data center, in capacity and underutilized IT assets easily within the same walls which they thought they were completely out of power and cooling and were running, into a decision to making, which was very expensive, to build a new data center. And that's probably the most ungreenest thing you can do, building a new data center. We have done this ourselves. A year and a half ago, we had plans for building a new data center. We had consolidated a lot of our data centers in 2 major ones here in the Round Rock, Austin area. It was getting full, and we decided not to build a new data center, but to focus on data center productivity, getting more work done on the IT equipment we have, and more IT equipment utilized. And I can report to you today that we have stopped planning a data center, and on top we have saved millions of dollars on not deploying new servers, not cooling these new servers, but utilizing our existing IT. And so there is no decision, in my opinion, to be made between green and having the best IT you can have. You don't have to pay extra. In fact, if you focus on green, it will pay, in my opinion, back immediately.
Rohit, what do you think people may be doing which is not truly taking them to that ultimate green? And at what point does this effort of totally optimizing it starts becoming counterproductive?
Yeah, great. So if I may, a few additional thoughts on the green on the cheap concept. I think from storage being near and dear to my heart and availability. Few additional thoughts. One being that there's a lot of in line with what Robert and Albert mentioned. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of things like restoring disabled power management features or voltage scaling, frequency scaling, variable speed fans, just simple, basic stuff, back to the basic stuff, so nothing, not costing you anything, just, kind of paying attention to the details and, paying attention to the productivity and efficiency of the data center, huge upside there. The other two concepts I want to add is on the availability side, for example, the way you architect with your existing infrastructure has huge implications. For example, when you think about high availability or clustering, if you're using a dedicated spare approach to clustering, right, where then you're effectively wasting money, space, energy, whereas a roaming spare where you have sort of a spare computer which is acting as a backup failback for multiple application environments, then so there are architectural solutions to try to be more efficient, more energy efficient. And then while storage is a smaller culprit relative to servers in terms of energy consumption, but I think every spinning disk in the data center which should not be spinning is actually energy wasted. So we've been working with our customers to kind of drive up utilization through storage steering, reclamations and data migration. So you actually, are spinning, disk only as necessary, as well as, a huge consumer of storage is actually data protection or archival stores. So, implementing storage efficiency initiatives in those areas pays huge dividends in terms of sort of, going green but it's back to sort of, again, it's all about productivity, efficiency, and indirectly you get to a greener data center. And then just a couple of additional thoughts on the question you asked, which is, as you think about green, when does it become too much? When does it become sort of just a buzz or a hype word and starts being counterproductive? My sense is that what you need to be doing is you should not look at implementing any technology without understanding the end-to-end implications. So it becomes counterproductive if you think about, let's say, a specific technology without understanding the full implications, right? So you say, all right, I'm going to deploy thin provisioning because it's going to help me get more green. What you have to think about is as you buy this new thin provisioning enabled array in your data center, what you need to think about is as you migrate data to it, unless your data migration tool is actually intelligent enough to actually copy that data properly, you're actually going to sort of pretty much render useless the thin provisioning feature on the data center. So your host stack or your server stack in terms of your storage infrastructure software needs to be thin provisioning aware. Otherwise, that investment in thin provisioning is useless. So the key message I want to highlight is that don't become technology happy or just buy things or implement things based on the hype factor. Think end to end, architect end to end, and understand sort of the touted benefit of technologies like thin provisioning or virtualization or what have you. All those benefits don't come for free. They have to be explicitly implemented, architected, and managed in the context of the data center. So if you want a productive data center, you have to sort of understand the full implications and kind of kick the tires on the side, bring in virtualization, kick the tires, bring in thin provisioning, kick the tires on the side before actually going big and broad. So most data centers are pretty diligent about doing that because of all the cost pressures and everything else. But there are enough examples where it's not, and it becomes worth mentioning. So that's my 2 cents.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and look at cloud infrastructure. We are talking about all the pain when we are holding it as a captive data center that we are handling, and comes with it all the different flavors of pains that we experience and try to handle them. How about going the cloud infrastructure route when especially we are under the gun to keep the costs low and also grow on demand, because there may be scaling down also that may be happening for businesses who are losing business because of the very economic climate. And going forward, scaling on demand or extending on demand would become far more possible and simpler and cost-effective if we go to the cloud infrastructure. If cloud infrastructure, what it promises, it also delivers. Let's talk more about it. We'll start with Robert when we come back.
Sell, buy, sell. All we talk about is money. Talk to an expert. Call now. Toll free 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790. Voice America Business.
Mom? Dad? How long should I wait for you? Mom? If I'm at soccer practice. What if something happens? Will you come get me? Should I stay where I am and wait for you? Or go to Grandma's house since it's closer? Shouldn't we pick a place to meet?
There's no reason not to have a plan in case of a terrorist attack.
Mom, if you're not home, should we go to the neighbor's house? How do we keep in touch with each other if the phones don't work? Should I be worried how we all get home?
And some extremely good reasons why you should.
Can you tell me?
Everybody should have a plan. Take 5 minutes to talk about where you'll meet and how you'll get in touch with each other in an emergency. For other things you can do to be prepared, visit www.ready.gov. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Ad Council.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
The bottom line in business. Voice America Business.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Welcome back. So, Robert, how about going clouding?
Well, I'm probably the minority here. I have a lot of concerns about cloud. There are obviously some places where it will work, but people are not paying a whole lot of attention to the whole security aspects of it. And you really have to do a full analysis before you go to cloud, and you also have to do a lot of risk management studies as well. I mean, we've looked at cloud computing, and at the present time, because of the particular sensitivity of our data, things like that, we just don't feel that cloud computing offers us, external commercial cloud computing offers us something that we would use. However, on the other hand, if you look at cloud computing as more technology than just going with commercial services, we can say, we can set up a cloud within the boundaries of our organization and make use of it that way, and that begins to make sense. So there are all sides of the coin that you have to look at. But the really important thing is you have to do a risk management analysis because, we have a motto. The one thing you don't want to do is be on the front page of the Washington Post. And so we don't want to be in a situation where, our cloud vendor accidentally dumped credit card numbers or Social Security numbers or something like that. So anyone who's looking at cloud computing has to look at the entire picture, not just that, this will give me on demand or this may save me money or whatever. You have to, put on your management hat and look at all aspects of this. And I know a lot of people get caught up in the excitement of it and don't do those things. And I just keep emphasizing to our folks here, there's a risk with everything you do, and you have to do a complete study about that to determine whether this is a good way to go.
Albert, what do you think?
Yeah, so many years ago, I think it was inconceivable to think of having payroll data not in your own mainframe, right, or on your own servers or on your own IT. Today, it's basically software as a service, and people became comfortable with that. So from Dell's perspective, we are powering 3 of the 5 world largest search engines. They're a humongous amount of conglomerates of computers. And the effectiveness, having a cloud management there, and I agree with Robert, it's a technology. It's maybe not necessarily just one or the other vendor. It's a way on looking on how to manage IT, and it has great opportunities. I think it will move into 3 distinct areas, really, when it comes to that classification. You will have the public cloud or the Internet cloud, like the Microsoft and Azure, Facebooks, and others. You will have private clouds of companies which choose to operate their data needs and data centers in a cloud-like fashion, which allows you to resource pool your servers and manage it as a resource pool. And then you still have the dedicated IT infrastructures for mission-critical or data-critical items where you just have to have the extra security or the extra bandwidth and extra management for all the reasons actually Robert and there other things including. But clouds, I think they're inevitable. They will come. They will be very big clouds. They are very, very cost effective. They also will drive economics into everybody's IT organization. So you might argue that, cloud email, for instance, is not for you because you can't maintain control over it. However, the price points which, the cloud providers will offer for the CFO to look at, they won't be forgotten. So the CFO all of a sudden has an outside benchmark on how cost effective it could be. And I think for the IT department, internally, it will be a yardstick, and they will have to say, yes, this is the base cost, and then I have to add maybe, certain elements to it because of extra needs of the company. But it will drive cost effectivity and, simplification of IT one way or another. So we believe cloud is a great opportunity for in general on how IT is done. It will be not just one type of cloud. We see at least 2 types of clouds, and who knows, maybe there will be more clouds.
Rohit, so you're standing outside and more so as an enabler for data center computing or overall computing for a given organization. How do you see a company having a captive versus a cloud infrastructure? Because when you're talking to a CFO or a CEO of a company, they don't really care. They really want computing to be done on demand, to be able to scale on demand. Whatever is the underlying infrastructure, they should not and they don't care as much, as long as they are not ponying up money and they're not getting a lot more risk than they would be having at any given present time. So where do you see an unbiased opinion that can be given from someone like yourself who is coming from an enablement standpoint?
Right. So from an enablement standpoint, again, to Albert's point earlier, the cloud paradigm kind of raises the bar in terms of and sort of the yardstick in terms of how efficiently you can build for scale and sort of build in an economic way, because the whole notion in in the cloud computing paradigm is that there'll be vast amounts of data or clients that'll be accessing the services that you provide using the bandwidth, ubiquitous and huge bandwidth that is available today. So you have to think about building for scale. You have to think about do it yourself. Think about the economics. You have to think about just enough of everything. So just enough of disaster recovery. You're not gonna go for overkill, as has been the propensity in the data centers. So if you think about, when we think about enabling, one thing that has helped us is to have this dual personality. We through our semantic protection network, which is sort of a software as a service or a cloud manifestation of a data protection service, where we have had to build our own infrastructure. And so that's sort of an example of sort of an internal cloud that we've experienced, and as a result, we've gained expertise in sort of enablement. And as we do that, what we do is, as we work with our customers, the first thing we tell them is, you have to do, going back to Robert's point, you have to go back to risk assessment. You have to think about what is strategic to you, what are things that you just do not feel comfortable sort of posting outside. But even in that case, what we espouse is sort of an internal cloud paradigm. So you're thinking of sort of the most economical, most efficient way to build a service internally. So there have been different terms used over the years around this concept, be it utility computing or autonomic computing, or things where you're kind of you're sort of charging for a pay-per-use model, and that model is obviously easier to implement in an external cloud manifestation, but even internally it can actually drive the right kind of behavior, drive the right kind of data center productivity. So as we interact with the senior executives of the customers that we serve, we guide them toward this decision tree, if you will, of sort of the pieces of the data center services that they feel comfortable sort of posting outside versus keeping inside, and then kind of architecting both those differently. And if you do go outside, what you have to do is you have to think about, investing in vendor management and investing in due diligence around the service levels that you want to establish with the external cloud provider that you want to work with. So, while you will sort of make this somebody else's problem, you have to invest enough to actually assess the risk, as well as to sort of manage the service levels and specify the service levels. So it's not a no-cost, no-brainer. It still requires some effort on your part.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you, Robert, Albert, and Rohit, for sharing your thoughts about how we can tighten the belt and not actually strangulate data centers and keep the ball rolling for our businesses. Now, while if we look at the data center being the lifeline for most organizations, and there is a natural tendency for us to save a buck here and there, and that's why we would like to tighten our budgets, we have to keep investing at least in a moderate fashion on the data center related people, processes, and technology, because unlike other IT components, data center cannot stop growing, and we have to make, in addition to those investments, we have to make simple changes which will bring some modest savings. But overall, as Rohit ended very well, is that we cannot eat the cake and have it too. So if this is going to be a lifeline for our business, we might as well bite the bullet and keep investing at least in a moderate fashion. If you have any questions or thoughts, please send us at views@ciotalkradio.com. That is views@ciotalkradio.com. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Join Sanjog Aul next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific for another hour of CIO Talk Radio.